Hey everyone, welcome back to Women Making Magic. I am so excited about today's interview with my dear friend, Allie Armitage. And I know you're gonna love her too. Her energy is just so amazing. Allie is the creator of Mind into Matter. She's working to create a life that brings her alive. Having found herself called onto a journey of personal transformation, she's uncovering her own rituals and practices to expand, and in the process, designing ways for others to do the same. How amazing does that sound? She founded Mind into Matter, a space from which she designs deep transformational experiences that connect people to who they are in their core and empower them to bring their inner wisdom to life. In a world of labels, she is a coach, a facilitator, a designer, and a mystic at heart. Welcome, Allie. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm so excited to be here with you.
Thank you so much for your time. I know we're going to make some magic here today. So the first question I have for you is, what do you stand for in your life and business, and how did you discover that?
That's a really amazing question, and I have to say so timely because even in the last few days, I've been having these realizations drop in that are just kind of reinforcing these little whispers that I kind of have always known.
Ooh.
And then I just never quite knew if the outside world was ready for that or could hold it. And
That's
then
so
all of a
exciting.
sudden you come across something and you're like, holy, this is what I've known all along. And it's just reflecting back to me that that was true and that was real. So
Oh my gosh.
I think of that, I've always stood for intuition and like what we know to be true and who we are in our most natural self. And I've always known when things don't fit quite right and have, been willing to just say, okay, not this, there's something else, and just carve a path, kind of step by step by step. There's been so many moments where you're like, well, what am I doing? Everybody else has all this outward success and they're building all these businesses or they're having these careers that look like this. And I'm still figuring it out. Am I not going fast enough? What's happening? And lately I've just been realizing that it's all in right timing.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, right? And you'll have these things connect where you're like, oh, that's why this piece never worked for me. Or I've tried to write this newsletter 8,000 times, but I needed this last piece of wisdom before I could finally put it all together. And for example, I was just writing a newsletter that I was sharing with you, and last time we caught up, and I went to write it 100 times, so many times, and every time it was good to get it out of me, and I knew it wasn't ready. And then there was the day where it was like, now it's ready. And then everything just flowed from there. And even more magic came out. I emailed the author and told her about the book that I had been promoting in my newsletter, and she responded in 30 minutes and started connecting me with resources. And it was one of those days where you're like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, of course this is how it was going to come together. It wasn't meant to be those other times, but this time, yes, this
Oh
is
my
the right.
God. I love that story. And I think it's just such a testament to that power of what I'm getting out of what you're saying is alignment, right? And following your intuition and just being willing to be in the mess and let it be messy and just keep going until things click. And that's really that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, it couldn't have worked before.
Yeah, totally. And I think to your really wisely worded question, to take a stand for that is really hard because everything else going on in our world is telling you to go faster, to produce, to go against your intuition or your inner knowing or your the wisdom that's inside, whatever that feels like to you. is not mirrored in the world around you. And that's why it is so hard to follow it. So to give all of ourselves grace in that process, because it's just really, really, really difficult. But it's also how humans have always operated. And we have to know that as we bring in these cool things like technology and lots of community and all that stuff's great, and it brings all this new influence in that can get in our space. So we just have to really take the stand for like creating our own space to just listen or understand what our own wisdom has to say.
Totally. 100%. And I totally agree with you that the world, you know, conventional society and how we're taught to do things, it doesn't at all work like that. And so to be able to live your life in that way and take a stand for that takes so much courage, right? Because you're really just doing it a different way.
Yeah. And so your point, like you had mentioned before, I think when we make that choice, there's also a lot of inner judgments that come up, you know? So it's not like it's just so easy to like create space.
Yeah, I'm gonna go like follow my intuition.
You can do it. No, first you come up with all of the shit that like you've internalized from the outside world in your mind, in your belief systems that are trying to jab at what your soul and your intuition knows. And so you first have to deal with yourself, who is kind of making some noise and clamoring around and beating up on you, which is why the practice of learning to love ourselves is not a flippant thing. It's real. It's hard. It takes a lot of practice to heal those beliefs and turn them around so they're in our favor and not working against us all the time.
Totally. That brings up such a good question for me. I know you do a lot of work around inner critic and self-judgment and that kind of stuff. Can you tell us more about your experience of your inner critic?
Yeah.
We're just diving right in.
I love it. It's so great. Because that's, you know, especially, I've always been in a relationship with my inner critic, right? And then the more self-awareness work I do, the more it's obvious, which in the beginning can be really hard because you wake your mind up to be able to see these things, and then all of a sudden you're seeing them everywhere.
Okay.
But then you get to know them, and that is powerful because you understand what triggers them, what they say to you. Tara Moore, who I know we both have read a lot of her work, has a really cool practice around giving your inner critic a personality profile and almost personifying her in an external way. A lot of coaching practices will do that, right? So that was one of the first most helpful things for me, to just recognize it wasn't me and be able to give it a name, and, you know, through a mindfulness practice, be able to start seeing, oh, okay, well, if I'm hearing this, like, you better get this email out right now, otherwise you're not going to get this piece of work. I'm like, oh, that's not what Allie thinks. That's Deirdre. I've named mine Deirdre. She's like this, like, super type A, works 100 hours a week, always looks perfect. She wears her hair like this, actually. So there's also pieces of the critic that we need. I think I'm learning there's a deeper relationship. Sometimes the critic is pointing at a truth, but there's a nicer way of saying it to ourselves. And that kind of was the next iteration, was not only identifying the voice of the critic, but learning how mean she was when she would talk to me.
Yeah.
And trying to soften that voice into something that's loving and something that's in my own court. You know, there's enough things working against me to do the work I want to do. My own voice does not need to be one of them if I want to create anything magical. So that takes a lot of rewiring. And ultimately, I think a journaling and writing practice has been really profound, because there's actually a lot of neuroscience to back up that you can rewire the brain through deep meditative journaling, and you can heal a lot of those voices and experiences. And I think it's important to note the critic isn't, it's like, it's real, you know, it's the personification of experiences we've had in a culture that doesn't support the like growth and evolution of an individual.
Totally.
It is a manifestation of the times you've probably been mean to yourself in the past,
or hurt or judged or whatever. Yeah.
Situational stuff. I mean, we're carrying our ancestors' grief, you know, so there's intense amounts of pressure on us. And I think it's very important to acknowledge all of that in the process, because the worst thing you want to do is beat yourself up for having an inner critic.
It's like a double whammy, just like
it's not gonna work. And I totally used to do that, so I know. I'm like a super recovering perfectionist.
It's like, oh, you're so mean to yourself.
Right? Exactly. God damn it, why are you so mean to yourself? Like, oh shit, that's not gonna work.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. It's so funny. And to your point, I think, yeah, like we're so ingrained with that, right? And we think it gives us some kind of sense of control. Like you were saying, of like, oh, if I don't send this email like right now, then the whole thing is going to fall apart. But really, like, no, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I've been coming to, and I'll say this, I'm having the awareness of, and I'm working on learning how to practice it, is that what my intuition and inner wisdom knows is in alignment with the universe and greater forces beyond me. So it's really easy to feel wrong in the moment, you know, because like, oh, man, I never respond to my emails on time, or oh, this person must be waiting for me. And then it's like, when you finally get a chance to respond, the person on the other side is like, oh, you know, this came at just the right moment.
Yeah, totally.
Of course it did, because like my inner knowing is in alignment with greater wisdom. So it's easy to get pulled into the people pleasing. I do that a lot, where I'm like, oh, this person wants this thing from me, and if I'm going to be a good, you know, business partner, or so like I want this person as a client, I have to please them. Totally. And when we're in the work that we're in, our actual, you know, the person we respond to is not that person.
It's not.
We're in our evolution. We're not here to just please them. So sometimes you have to trust that your knowing, even if it goes against what is happening outside of you in the physical world, is actually aligned with something greater that is working with you. Yeah.
Totally. That you can't even know. That's so beautiful. So I love that you said the work that we're in. I would love to hear your origin story, as it were, of how you started doing this work, how you made the transition. What was that like for you?
Lifelong journey.
Starting in the womb.
Starting back with my grandparents.
Yeah.
I've been having that awareness lately. In fact, that's probably another separate conversation. Interestingly, at this point where I'm at now, I'm having these insights that where I am moving into my career, work, whatever, contributions to the world is like this grand return to my essence as a kid. Oh my God, and so I'm really, it's just been so fascinating to me that all the things that I had to do to get me here were really important and are tools that I'm now using. Totally. And kind of led me to things I needed to shed so that I could just get back to who I've always been. So in some ways, I think my origin story is being this little girl who grew up like in the middle of nowhere, Maryland, in a rural part of like kind of rolling farmlands. And we didn't have cable as kids, so my sister and I and our neighborhood friends would just play outside and make forts and like dream up these like communities in our mind and so like good. Play. So we were pilgrims, and then we were teachers, and then we had these like magical tree fort society. And so, you know, I just spent a lot of time in my imagination and, you know, in my body too, to be honest, like playing and making things. Like we create a lot of stuff, and I was always into writing and drawing and like making things with random objects, which I'm doing all the time again now. And it's so funny to me. I used to get paint chips as a kid from the hardware store and like make random designs with paint chips because they were free. And
and they're so pretty.
They're this beautiful palette.
Totally.
So that was me as a child. And I went through all these iterations thinking, oh, I want to be an architect, or I want to be a landscaper, designer. And then I want to be an interior designer. And then I hit the point where you had to choose. And I think the outside world and, you know, other influences were ringing in my ears about like, we have to be practical. And I looked at the people who looked like they were having these like very successful careers. And they were in, for example, some of my family was in like marketing and PR. So it's like, oh, I'll do marketing because that's great. And
that's stable. Yeah.
That's stable. But, you know, I had many a moment in school. I was at the business school at the University of Maryland where I was like, should I just like quit this and go study visual merchandising? There were so many moments my heart was like trying to pull me towards the art and the like imagination. And then I found this professor who has been one of the most incredible influences in my life. His name is Dr. Gerald Suarez, and he teaches the principles of systemic thinking and design thinking. And he created this playground inside one of our classrooms to work on anything we wanted. It basically was like, what do you care about? What feels meaningful to you? I'm going to give you a bunch of tools and you're going to spend this semester building this thing.
That's amazing.
And so I ended up on a project building a bike sharing system for college campuses, and it's called WeBike. And it was so cool and so exciting, and we had so much momentum. He really encouraged us to start a business with it. So we, after college, decided to like, because at that age, you don't know any better. And I feel so fortunate to have had that experience at that time, because there was like, I didn't know that I should be making other choices about to be like more practical when you're in college. Like the world feels so possible.
Totally.
And I had a sister he'd worked in the White House. He worked with like executives. He knew what he was doing. So if he said that we should try this, then we should totally try it.
Of course you should. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so we like hustled some side jobs and tried to make this idea work. And it was very empowering for me to have this experience where I could try to bring an idea into the world. At the end of the day, that's what I'm learning that experience was for me, was to like learn how to bring ideas into the real world and prototype them and test them. And it was one of the coolest days when we launched our program on campus, a prototype of it. And I would use the bike to bike from the metro in College Park to the business school. So I was working there right after college, and I was like riding, and we had this text message thing where you would text to rent the bike, the stationless program. And so I just remember using it and being like, this is so cool.
This is so cool. Yeah.
In my head a couple years ago, and it took us a really long time to launch it. But now it's like in the world. It's in the world. This is so cool. So I think I had this really empowering early experience of being able to create something and knowing that it was possible, even though we had so many obstacles along the way, and it took a really long time. We were able to bring it into the world. And then there was we also really struggled with real world stuff. Our team dynamics weren't fabulous. We were young. We didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't really understand business. The idea itself worked really well. And we didn't know how to create a business engine underneath of it. And we were selling to universities, and we would just get shut down so many times by these administrators. Students would find us. Students would get excited about us. And then we'd come pitch, and they would just be like, well, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, we'll be ready for something like this.
What?
And that can be the university environment for innovation. Just depends on like where you're trying to go. And we really hit a lot of skepticism and roadblocks. And we were doing this we started in 2007, and we were probably doing most of our pitching in like 2010. And so it's also a note I learned around timing, because bike sharing was like fringe becoming really cool.
Yeah.
A proof point, like today, our idea would be great.
Right.
But when we launched it, it was
a little bit too early.
And not a lot of, we were trying to test it with an audience that wasn't willing to take risks at all. And we would come in and be like, you would be the first campus to have a stationless bike sharing program on your campus. And the administrators like get wide and be like, no
way.
I'd be the first campus, which is
we want to see your test cases from the past 10 guys. Yeah.
You've done it 10 times. So that was a lesson for us too on, what works for our audience doesn't work for everyone. So anyways, after about 5 years of trying to make this work and learning so much along the way, we just it was tiring, and we were like hustling and trying to make that work. And it got to the point where I couldn't sustain myself off of it anymore. And I kept having to work these random jobs or a side job or a part-time job to make it work. And for a while that was great. And then at a certain point, I couldn't do it any longer.
You just get tired.
And I had a mentor who was kind of very helpful in helping me realize that it's okay to let things go. It doesn't mean it wasn't a super valuable experience. Sometimes there's a life cycle to an experience, to an idea, to a business. Lots of entrepreneurs have failed their first time. And so it was really transformative for me to learn to let go of the idea and to go through the hard stuff. I mean, it was hard. We had actually just signed a contract with the new school. After we made this choice. We had just crowdfunded. We had done all these things as a last-ditch effort to try and make it work. And then we had the realization of, no, this isn't going to work. So then we had to go back.
Oh, no.
We had
Never
to go
mind.
back. This was like one of my most essential learnings as a perfectionist, because the thing I was the most afraid of was failing. And here I was having to admit that I was failing. And it was really healing for me, because actually, sending the email to that client to let them know what was going on, sending the email to everyone who'd funded us in the crowdfunding campaign was like a moment of walking up to my fear and just saying, I guess I'm going to do this. I guess I can handle it.
Wow.
And like sending the emails was like this weight. I was blown away. And then, the responses are just amazing. It's always that way with what you fear,
Yeah.
You're the one. I was the one that was so scared about it and thinking everyone's going to just question, why did I put so much time into this? What was I doing?
I'm a failure, right? Like we self-identify with that so much, I think.
Yeah, totally. And it was the opposite. People were so proud and just saying, oh, it's great you tried. It's amazing how I realized how I was internalizing. That's an example of the critic, right? That was my own judgments. I was expecting to hear from everyone else, and it was nothing but love and encouragement and support. And so that was actually a really beautiful ending, but then I had no clue what I was going to do with my life. So that's how I ultimately kind of found my way into personal growth, because I just started, after I was healing, and thank God I was working with a coach during this experience, because we have to land these very painful experiences in the nourishing arms of somebody who can help us see what's really happening, harvest the wisdom, and never take it on to ourselves as wrong or shameful. And it's easy to do it that way. If we want to walk in the world with our hearts open, we have to, have those spaces for us to process the hard stuff. And so I'm super grateful to the coach I was working with at that time, who really helped me through that, and some of my mentors who just helped me not take it on as my wound.
Yeah, totally.
And then I started discovering how powerful all of that work was, like self-awareness, self-discovery. I started asking, well, was bike sharing really what I was wanting with my life? I don't think so. I didn't grow up just like biking all the time. That wasn't who I am. And so I started the multi-year journey of just really trying to understand who I was and what I did care about, and like just diving into all the books and all the podcasts and all the articles and all the classes that I could. Yeah. And along the way, realizing there was so much important self-discovery work that was giving me a greater sense of who I was and who I could be. And I decided that was what I wanted to help other people do, because it had been so powerful for me. So that ultimately led me into Mind and into Matter, which coaching, teaching, all of these things. And I'll admit, it's still been this winding journey ever since then.
Yeah, totally.
I'm always growing. And so what I've realized is I want to create a business that is allowing me to keep seeking my growth, my own growth, and then transform the resources and tools and things that I find so powerful into experiences that can help other people do the same thing. So I always see it as this engine of like discovery and then designing for people and offering a way for other people to kind of experience the same things. Because the truth is, this is the stuff we need to know to live a life that we want. And it's really hard. You have to seek out non-traditional ways if you want to learn it. You're not taught this in school. Yeah. That's one of the biggest, we need to change schools so that this is important.
Normalized.
Learn. Totally. Yeah, exactly. You can't function healthily without a lot. I just don't understand how we expect that to happen. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful. There's so much wisdom in this story and everything you just said. And I think it's such a powerful testament to this idea of failure and turning it into something, transmuting it, right, into a gift that you can help others with. I know I've experienced the same thing of, looking at a project or a situation where I'm like, oh my God, this was a failure, right? This did not go the way I wanted it to. And I'm a better person. I've grown, I've learned, I can now take this experience and turn it into something useful. And so then it's not a failure, right? If you can, go through that process, which can be so painful, but then turning that pain into a power, I think is so important.
So important, and it's so magical because I now see it everywhere, that the things we think are either what makes us so isolated or is so painful or is so shameful are actually our biggest gifts. Yeah. They're always our biggest gifts if we are willing to walk into a different relationship with them, and that transmutation, the alchemy. My coach had used some terms like metabolizing
totally.
And I think about this all the time. I go back to the University of Maryland often. I was just there Monday to speak about the experience. And I would never today say that WeBike was a failure, because it changed my entire life. And it gave me everything I have to stand upon right now to do the work that I do. I for a long time thought, well, I can't coach people because I only have a failed business in my resume. And no one cares.
How mean, inner critic.
Right? And the biggest surprise to me has been that no one cares, because it's how we talk about it, right? So if I don't talk about it like that, and I talk about it from the experience, then the story I have to offer is such a different one.
Totally.
And it also gives us all permission to try, because I think kind of what you're alluding to with failure is that that's what prevents us from even trying a lot. And the vibrancy, the creativity that's possible in life is on the other side of trying. It's not before. That's what's really hard to hold sometimes. And to go through that kind of experience and know that you come out okay is actually the best preparation for doing really creative, soul-aligned work that offers something to the world.
Oh my God, 100%, 100%. And I think that time period of trying, right? There's always that potential, but of failure or having it not go how you want it or how your ego wants it to go. But you're so right. Like that's how we make magic, right? That's where the magic happens. Yeah. And I think there's such an important point to be made for this difference between knowledge. Like we can know in theory how things work or what we're supposed to be doing or whatever, and then wisdom, which is really only gained by like being in the mess of it. And
amen. Yes.
I've been kind of feeling into that recently, especially in personal development. We can like read so many books and, you know, do so many exercises, but unless we're actually like practicing it in our own life.
Yes, exactly. And that is such an important nugget that we need to hold right now in our world for the evolution that's coming. Totally. You know, we all feel it. We can sense like this unrest.
It's here. It's happening.
Bringing something out. And as a whole, we're all going through it, you know, and what's happening out in the world is also a reflection of what's happening within us and what we're all experiencing at an individual level. And to me, learning how to practice what I preach, it's so easy to have great ideas and spout them off and say, this is what I believe, this is what I think. And then if you look in the mirror and you are not actively practicing it daily, you don't have the wisdom to really be sharing that with other people, in my personal belief. And or I'll take that back. Your what you know is more shallow.
Yeah.
Because the other thing I realized is that as we learn to practice what we preach, we learn how unique we are in every situation. And so by knowing how unique it is for us, the application of some theory or wisdom, we then realize it's going to be unique for every other person. So in fact, I can't really give advice to you. I can share from my experience. I can offer things I see to be true. I can offer resources, and then it's up to you to figure out what that means for you.
Totally. And I can hold that space, right? I can be this like soft landing pad.
Totally. I can help
for you.
Beauty for you. I can show you all your potential, and I can't do it for you. And anyone who wants to do it for you is robbing you of the experience. You know, they're taking away the wisdom that you're going to gain from going through. And I personally think this is what we need to ask the leaders in our world right now, to practice what they preach, because everyone is just saying, and who is practicing it? No, like on all sides, you know, on all sides. It's so easy to say and really hard to do. And I think that it would also slow us down. We're in this place where we're just swirling and we're trying to go so fast. And the act of learning to practice what's essential is the grounding effect. You know, it'll help bring us into the moment, help ground us down, because you can't go so fast if you actually have to apply and learn from what is going on. So that point is just so important for what we need right now.
Totally, 100%. It's that difference between like a Band-Aid and a quick fix, right? Which our culture is so addicted to, versus lasting transformation.
Yes. Totally. Exactly. Yeah. And that's that belief that it also asks it for us to believe that it will be okay. We do have time. We do have time to fix this. There isn't, yes, we cannot avoid it anymore. We have to stand in the presence of what's really going on and learn to hold it. And we cannot rush through the things that matter. And so,
as much as we want to.
I know. And listen, I say all these things, and I am the first to admit how hard it is to practice it. You know, I catch myself daily just brushing past the things I know to be true, and I've been working really hard on trying to figure out the rituals that help me remember.
Yeah.
Like so many moments and so many times all the time, like I'll hold stones to just like ground me into what does it mean to be present. It's really hard, especially in our world. So
perfect segue into my next question. So I know that this about you, that you're so intentional with your practices, that you really, you said before the call that you've been working more with creating sacred space for yourself. I would love to hear more about that and what that's doing for you, because I think it's a missing piece, or it's a piece we don't really consider, right? Like we can be doing the work, but even in just our physical space may not be top of mind. And I know that's something that you incorporate a lot. So I'm so curious to hear about that.
Yeah. Oh, I could go on for hours. So not do that. And let me remember what I feel will be helpful to share. And this is what's been so exciting, because this is the little girl in me. What I think she wanted to do all along was create beautiful sacred spaces. I've been realizing that it's an awareness for me that creating beauty is a form of power and contribution and an offering right now. I used to brush it off as like, it's a part of me, but I shouldn't be indulging in that so much. My love of fashion and my love of beautiful things. And it's like, that's extraneous, And I just have come to realize that when we do that, we write off the power of the feminine, because we know how powerful sacred space is. And it is what invites us to see more love in the world, which is what we need. So to me, this desire to create sacred space around me is again one of those ways of helping me remember and see beauty reflected to me often, so that I carry that with me in the world. And usually what I do is kind of just find things around me, or when I come across something that is an object that feels gorgeous and I want to put meaning into it, I will, bring it into my being, whether that's buying it, or like I was going through for some walks around the neighborhood I'm staying in right now in DC, Capitol Hill, and there were like some flowers that had fallen on the sidewalk, so I just picked them up, and I'll show you. I made this like little bowl with the flower in it, and I'm spilling water. I have these stones that I like put around the objects, and I take each one and like ask it to tell me an aspect of myself that I want to remember. So this stone, for example, I just got in Colorado when I was out there with our friend Steph. We went for a hike, and there was a loose stone. I think it's like a rose quartz or a smoky quartz. And it reminds me to be present. It reminds me of presence, because when I'm with the people I love, I want to be present for this conversation. I want to be present. So I will hold it in my hand, because I am such a tactile person. Yeah. So it helps me to just like hold it and feel it and remember presence, presence. And it can be a mantra, presence. And I have a few others, like this one. It's from Mexico, and it to me is my courage and boldness. It's gorgeous. I love the color. I have another one that's hematite. That's reminds me of my inner mystic. And I just, I put them around the space. I move them too throughout the time. Like I'll put them in one place for a little, and then I move them around, just depending on where I want them near me.
That's so cool.
And I bought this little medicine pouch when I was in Boulder. It's really cute, little, beautiful, like teal leather pouch. and I'll pick the stones I want for the day and just carry them with me in my purse. And it's a reminder, it's a physical reminder. This work, all the things we talk about, it's so heady and abstract, and it can feel like it's out there or like it's in here, but where is it in my physical world? And I've started to become really fascinated by how do we make these things concrete, and how do we put them into our physical world around us so that it doesn't always feel like it's just this like belief system I'm trying to heal. No, here's a stone that shows me this is what I want most. I can touch it. I can feel it. I can carry it with me. And I don't think we can underestimate the power of that. And my intuition says there's a lot of science behind this. I've been realizing that the more neuroscience uncovers what's really going on inside of us, the more it actually proves so many of these things matter.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's not just some cool idea. There is actually neurological, connection going on, and it's
important. Yeah.
It's important. Yeah. And I'm feeling myself called to begin understanding some of those things so I can bring that science in. But for now, I just know my intuition knows that I need this. And so I'm letting myself run and figure these things out, and then offering in case other people along the way have their own intuitions, knowing that they need it too.
Totally. Oh, that's so powerful. I think it's so true. Like, yeah, physical space and your physical environment. I mean, energy is real, right? And so like having that aligned with what you want to create, or setting that intention and being reflected back to you, it's like a two-way street.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And whatever we can do to create the energy we want to be in inside of our spaces, then when I walk out the door, I am in this, embodied, vibrant space. So then every interaction that I then go have mirrors that back to me. And then it's a reinforcing loop, right? So then it becomes really powerful. And then my reality starts to become that way because I've learned how to create that energy first for myself, and then I can walk out in the world, project it, and have it come back to me. And then it's a great spiral in the right direction.
Yeah, it's like how you want the spiral to go and not the other way around.
Exactly. And I also acknowledge some days you don't want to do that, and that's okay. I had a day just recently where I was in a grumpy mood and I didn't want to do my rituals, and I realized that, I'm not going to do it every day. If I give myself permission to take a day off, I'm far more likely to come back and do it the next day than if I beat myself up over it, because
thanks, inner critic. Yeah.
We're human. Yeah. We're human. We can't, it gets hard when we feel like, oh my gosh, I've just beaten myself up over this a lot. So I share it because I used to be like, well, all these people are so routine and they can do the same thing every day. And I can't always. And it's been hard for me to hold myself up to that standard. And the truth is, I just need to give myself permission to do what feels nourishing to me. And that's my goal.
Oh my God, 100%. 100%. And I think that it's so funny to me when people get so attached to their rituals. I do the same thing, right? Sometimes I'm like, oh, I didn't do my mindset practice today. I'm just not feeling it. But really, why are we doing the ritual in the first place, right? Why are we doing the practice in the first place? Just to feel good and connected. So
oh my God, yes.
The how and the form is so less important than the outcome, right? Of just shifting your energy and how you're feeling. I think it's and when I catch myself in it, I think it's hilarious because it's wait, what?
Exactly. So true. Because we have to ask why, I think you really wisely pointed out. Why am I doing this to begin with? Sometimes we need to question that. And sometimes something works for a while and then it is no longer the thing that works for us. Yeah. And I'll miss that point and still be forcing myself to do it and realizing, well, this isn't even creating what I once wanted. I guess it's time for something new. And that's great. We're creative and we can come up with new stuff. Yeah. We don't have to be stuck in the ways that we've always done things.
100%. I'm so curious. You mentioned your intuition, your connection to your intuition, which I think is so powerful. So I know a lot of my clients and a lot of women I talk to question, like, how do I get started listening to my intuition? Like, what does that mean? What do I do? So I'm so curious, like, what that experience is for you, and how do you listen to it, and just how you've cultivated that.
Yeah, that is a really great question. And I think it takes so much practice, which is the other important piece.
Totally.
Is that, some moments we're in it and some moments we aren't. I think for me, learning to meditate was one of the first inroads for me. And also, as a fairly, I'm drawn towards the arts and creativity. And when I go see a beautiful exhibit or go to a concert that just is magical, I'm connected in those moments. So I think there's kind of twofold. One, your body knows where to take you. Whatever inspires you, whatever connects you is taking you there. And you can trust that as an invitation to what will help you feel totally in yourself. And learning to meditate really helped me, because I was the shadow side of being creative is that your mind can go in 1,000 directions, right? Totally. And so often I would know something and then I would overthink it and allow myself to go down a path way too far beyond the initial knowing. Mm-hmm. I've had this realization for myself, kind of ringing in my ears often, is that my inner critic and my ego are usually the voice inside of me that are yelling and screaming and clanging about. My intuition is the voice that's whispering. It's so soft, and that's why it's so easy to pass over it, because we're not trained to realize that gentleness, that very, soft feminine knowing could be enough to be right, at least right for us. And so I think the things that bring us alive, the things that help us soften and hear maybe what's beneath all the noise, writing for me has been a huge practice this year. Yeah. This book, Writing Down Your Soul, which I think you read.
So good.
Oh, it's so good. That's the author I reached out to, because I want to start creating some kits, inner knowing kits to help people
so cool.
And create space for writing. So for me, that writing practice of soul writing, deep, deep, deep expressive writing, will help me get my critic out, my ego out. And then once I'm past a lot of that, then my soul voice comes through. Yeah. And I've also really realized that it's a daily practice. It's like every day I have to wake up, and I've been calling it how do I come home to my soul today? Because when I wake up, I might not be there. Yeah. I'm not, actually. I know that. And so it's being willing to acknowledge there's some work to get to that place daily. And it can be fun, and it doesn't have to feel so crazy. It could be putting flowers around your space and putting on music and painting. Maybe it's not writing for everyone. Maybe it's painting, or, gosh, it's just what allows you to express who you are to the point where you can hear it and see it yourself. So I kind of think that there's 1,000 ways to figure out what your intuition is. Mm-hmm. And it's going to ask us to be gentle and to be kind. Yeah. And to accept and embrace that is enough. And that's what our true feminine elements are all about. And because we live in an overly masculinized world, we all have that masculine voice inside. I have it all the time. It's well, you don't have time to do this right now. You better on this thing.
Just get started.
Sit and create this little altar. Yeah, right. You need to go get ready for this workshop you're about to do. And I'm learning that my soul voice has to be no, this is more essential than that. This is more important to me than that. And I think, it's just all of us acknowledging that within us, we have to learn to love our femininity and see it as essential and prioritize it and put it first and make it important to us as living and breathing and drinking water and all of those things. Like, we can't live without it.
No.
It's essential.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I think it's such a, they're related. You can't have one without the other. Like, I think that's so much of, the issues that we see now is that we're disconnected from that soul piece, that feminine piece. And so it's like, okay, if I can create this time for myself and prioritize this and feel good in this moment, and then when I go and do my workshop, it's going to be so much easier. It's going to flow so much better.
Oh, yes. And I'm going to say the words that I most need to say,
Yeah, exactly.
If I practice, I'll say the words that I thought I needed to say before. But if I actually create space to feel grounded, to feel connected to myself, to feel inspired, to soak up the energy of the people around me, I'll say what needs to be said in the moment that everyone needs to hear. I mean, that's how we get closer to, letting creativity in the universe flow through us, right?
Totally. Yes.
And preparing is important, and we can then learn to let it go and say, okay, come through me. And that's freaking terrifying. But it's also beautiful, and it's the work.
It's so beautiful. Yeah, I read something recently. I think Glennon Doyle Melton posted an Instagram of her at 5 a.m. writing her Super Soul Sunday speech, which she gave a couple weeks ago now. And yeah, it was like, okay, faith and sweat. I'm showing up, I'm preparing for this talk, and when I get out onto the stage,
yes,
I'm just channeling, right?
Yes.
And I think, that's everything.
Yeah, it's both and.
Right.
Yeah,
totally. 100%. Oh my gosh. This conversation could go on forever.
I know, totally.
So I have one more question for you. I'm so curious. What does making magic mean to you?
That is a beautiful question. What does making magic mean to me? What's coming to me right now is that it's just letting the divine spark that's already inside of you out. We all have magic. We all carry magic. And it might be buried a lot underneath other things. So that's what some of these practices help us to do. But then you get to this place where there's just vibrancy and joy and excitement and creative flow coming through us. Yeah. And you just get to usher it out into the world, say, here's this thing. And when it's done from that, birthing, I've been thinking of myself lately as a doula.
Totally.
Birthing my ideas into the world and then offering. The process itself is nourishing. It's fun. It's beautiful. It brings us alive. Yeah. It doesn't have to be so hard. And we need, I think every person holds a little piece of the truth for what our world is going through right now. So, it's not just a nice to have, it's a need to have. We need everyone's creativity, everyone's offering, everyone's perspective. We need to make room for it, and we need to have the courage to share it. So I just, bless everyone's journey on going through that experience, because it is magical, and it gets to feel fun, and you get to feel alive as a human. We're born on this earth, and there is so much magic and beauty, and we often we forget that it's being alive is really unbelievable.
It totally is. It's such a trip.
It's both really hard and terrifying, and there's a lot of suffering, and it's gorgeous, and we can feel alive within it. So 100%. Why not, uphold that and make it possible for ourselves?
Oh my God. 100%. I love that so much. Thank you, Allie, so much for sharing your wisdom with me today, with all our listeners. I'm so curious if they want to learn more about you and connect with you online, where should they go?
Awesome. So I have a website, mindintomatter.co. That's my living space-ish. I also am on Instagram, and I post a lot of my rituals and practices. That's probably where I'll go the most to share things that are happening. So my Instagram is at Allie Armitage, and I think you have these links. So you can
I'll put them in the notes.
Share with folks. And sometimes I post on Facebook, but I'm a visual person, so Instagram is where to come join me in the journey.
So amazing. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for doing this.